The history of the Buddha. 5. The two chief disciples. The occasion was this. The wanderer Sanjaya was living at Rajagaha with a large following of wanderers, with 250 wanderers. And Sariputta and Moggallana were living the holy life under the wanderer Sanjaya. They had made a pact that whichever of them first reached the deathless should inform the other. Now it being morning, the venerable Asaji dressed, and, taking his bowl and outer robe, he went into Rajagaha for alms. His manner as he went inspired confidence, whether in moving forwards or backwards, looking ahead or aside, bending or stretching. His eyes were downcast, and he moved with grace. The wanderer Sariputta saw him thus as he was begging for alms in Rajagaha, and he thought, there are arahants in the world, those who possess the arahant path, and this bhikkhu is one of them. Suppose I approach him and ask under whom he has gone forth, or who is his teacher, or whose Dhamma he confesses. But then he thought, it is not the time to ask this bhikkhu while he is wandering for alms among houses. Suppose I follow behind him to trace what the seekers have discovered. When the venerable Asaji had finished his round, he left Rajagaha with his alms food. Then the wanderer Sariputta went up to him and greeted him. When this courteous formal talk was finished, he stood at one side, and he said to him, "Friend, your faculties are serene, the color of your skin is clear and bright. Under whom have you gone forth? Or who is your teacher? Or whose Dhamma do you confess?" There is the great monk, friend, the son of the Sakyans, who went forth from a Sakyan clan. I have gone forth under that blessed one. He is my teacher. It is that blessed one's Dhamma that I confess. But what does the venerable one's teacher say? What does he tell? I have only recently gone forth, friend, I have only just come to this Dhamma and discipline. I cannot teach you the Dhamma in detail. Still I will tell you its meaning in brief. Then Sariputta said, So be it, friend. Say much or little as it suits you. Tell me but the meaning now. For I need no more than the meaning, with no thought of details yet. The venerable Asaji told the wanderer Sariputta this sketch of the Dhamma. The perfect one has told the cause of causally arisen things, and what brings their cessation too. Such is the doctrine preached by the great monk. Now when the wanderer Sariputta heard this statement of the Dhamma, the spotless, immaculate vision of the Dhamma arose in him. All that is subject to arising is subject to cessation. This is the truth, even if that were all. You have attained the state where is no sorrow, that we for many times 10,000 ages have let pass by unseen. Sariputta the wanderer went to Moggallana the wanderer. Moggallana the wanderer saw him coming. He said, Your faculties are serene, friend, the color of your skin is clear and bright. Is it possible that you have found the deathless? Yes, friend, I have found the deathless. But how did you find it, friend? Sariputta the wanderer told what had happened. When Moggallana the wanderer heard that statement of the Dhamma, the Perfect One has told the cause of causally arisen things, and what brings their cessation too. Such is the doctrine preached by the great monk. Then the spotless, immaculate vision of the Dhamma arose in him. All that is subject to arising is subject to cessation. This is the truth, even if that were all. You have attained the state where is no sorrow, that we for many times 10,000 ages have let pass by unseen. Then Moggallana said, Friend, let us go to the Blessed One. The Blessed One is our teacher. But friend, these 250 wanderers are living here, depending on us, looking to us. They ought to be consulted first. They will do as they think fit. They went together to the wanderers and told them, Friends, we are going to the Blessed One. The Blessed One is our teacher. We live depending on the Venerable Ones, looking to them. If they go to lead the holy life under the great monk, then we too will do the same. So Sariputta and Moggallana went to Sanjaya the wanderer and told him what they were going to do. Enough, friends, do not go. Let us three guide this community together. For the second and for the third time they told him the same thing, and received the same answer. Then Sariputta and Moggallana went with the 250 wanderers to the bamboo grove. But hot blood gushed from Sanjaya the wanderer's mouth. The Blessed One saw Sariputta and Moggallana coming in the distance. When he saw them, he told the bhikkhus, Here come these two friends, Kalita and Upatissa. These two will be my chief disciples. En auspicieux père. Then it was that the Master announced them. They who were already liberated in the domain of profound knowledge, in the supreme destruction of the stuff of existence, before they had yet reached the bamboo grove, saying, Here come these two friends, Kalita and Upatissa. These two will be my chief disciples. En auspicieux père. Sariputta and Moggallana went up to the Blessed One and prostrated themselves at his feet. They said to him, Lord, we wish to have the going forth under the Blessed One, and the admission. Come, bhikkhus, the Blessed One said, the Dhamma is well proclaimed. Lead the holy life for the complete ending of suffering. And that was those Venerable Ones' admission. Now at that time a number of well-known Magadhan clansmen were leading the holy life under the Blessed One. People disapproved. They murmured and protested, the monk Gautama is creating childlessness and widowhood, he is obliterating the clans. Already 1,000 matted hair ascetics have gone forth under him, and these 250 wanderers, and now these well-known clansmen, have gone to lead the holy life under the monk Gautama. When they saw bhikkhus, they mocked them with these stanzas. Gautama the monk did come to the fort of Magadha. He led away all Sanjaya's band. Whom will he lead away today? Bhikkhus heard this, and they went to the Blessed One and told him. He said, "This affair will not last long. It will only last 7 days. At the end of 7 days it will subside. So when people mock you with that stanza, you can reprove them in return with this stanza. They lead by Dhamma who are great heroes too, and perfect ones. And when they thus lead by Dhamma, where is the ground for jealousy?" So when the people mocked them, they reproved the people in return. Then people began to think, monks who are sons of the Sakyans lead by Dhamma, it seems, not against Dhamma. And the affair lasted 7 days, and at the end of 7 days it subsided. Some monks and Brahmins hold this theory and view, I have a liking for all, and some this, I have no liking for any, and some this. I have a liking for some, I have no liking for some. Now the view of those whose theory and view is I have a liking for all is close to lust, to bondage, to relishing, to acceptance, to clinging. But the view of those whose theory and view is I have no liking for any is close to non-lust, to non-bondage, to non-relishing, to non-acceptance, to non-clinging. Here the Wanderer D. Superscript 2 Ganaka remarked, Master Gautama commends my view, Master Gautama recommends my view. And the view of those whose theory and view is, I have a liking for some, I have no liking for some, is, in what they have a liking for, close to lust, to bondage, to relishing, to acceptance, to clinging. While in what they have no liking for, it is close to non-lust, to non-relishing, to non-acceptance, to non-clinging. A wise man among those monks and Brahmins whose theory and view is I have a liking for all considers thus, my view is that I have a liking for all. But if I obstinately misapprehend and insist on it, saying only this is true, everything else is wrong, then I shall clash with both the others, with the monk or Brahmin whose theory and view is I have no liking for any, and with the monk or Brahmin whose theory or view is I have a liking for some, I have no liking for some. I shall clash with these two. And when there is a clash there are disputes. And when there are disputes, there are quarrels. And when there are quarrels, there is harm. When he foresees that, he abandons that view without clinging to some other view. That is how these views are abandoned and relinquished. The same paragraph is repeated for the wise men whose view is I have no liking for any, and I have a liking for some, I have no liking for some. First voice. Now, Agavasana, this body that has material form, consists of the 4 great entities, of earth, water, fire, and air. It is procreated by a mother and father, and built up out of rice and bread. It is subject to impermanence, to anointing and rubbing, to dissolution and disintegration. It must be regarded as impermanent, as suffering, as a boil, as a dart, as a calamity, as an affliction, as alien, as disintegrating, as void, as not self. When he regards it so, he abandons his desire and affection for it, and his habit of treating it as the necessary basis for all his inferences. Point 1. Now there are three kinds of feeling: pleasant feeling, painful feeling, and neither painful nor pleasant feeling. When a man feels any one of these three, he does not feel the other two. Pleasant feeling is impermanent, formed, dependently originated, subject to exhaustion, fall, fading, and ceasing. And so too is painful feeling and neutral feeling. When a well-taught noble disciple sees thus, he becomes dispassionate towards pleasant feeling and painful feeling and neutral feeling. Being dispassionate, his lust fades away. With the fading of lust, he is liberated. When his heart is liberated, there comes the knowledge. It is liberated. He understands, birth is exhausted, the holy life has been lived out, what was to be done is done, there is no more of this to come. A bhikkhu whose heart is thus liberated sides with none, disputes with none, and he employs, though without misapprehension, the speech current in the world. During this time the Venerable Sariputta was standing behind the Blessed One, fanning him. Then he thought, the Blessed One, the Sublime One, speaks, it seems, by direct knowledge of the abandoning and relinquishing of these things. And as he considered thus, his heart was liberated from taints through not clinging. Meanwhile the spotless, immaculate vision of the Dhamma arose. In the Wanderer Daiganika, he said, I go to Master Gautama for refuge, and to the Dhamma and to the Sangha. Narrator 2. During this time King Suddhodana sent Kaladevi, the son of one of his ministers, to Rajagaha in order to the two chief disciples persuade his son, the Buddha, to visit Kapilavatthu. Before he announced his mission, Kaladevi first became a bhikkhu. However, at the end of the winter, it was the first after the enlightenment, he announced his mission with these verses intended to persuade the Buddha to make the journey. Hoping for fruit, they have let their green veils drop and blaze out boldly with a scarlet flame. It is the hour, great hero, taster of truth. Trees in high bloom that are a mind's delight, wafting odors to the four winds of space. Their leaves they have let fall, expecting fruit. It is time, O hero, to set out from here. Now is a pleasant season, Lord, for travel, for it is not too cold or over warm. Let the Sakyans and the Kolians see you facing the west, crossing the Rohin superscript 2 river. Fields are plowed in hope. Seeds are sown in hope. Traders sail in hope across the sea for wealth. Oh, may the hope I nurse come to success. Again and again the planting of the seed. Again and again the divine king sends the rain. Again and again the ploughman till the fields. Again and again the kingdom reaps the corn. Again and again the mendicants go their rounds. Again and again the generous give their gifts. Again and again this giving of their gifts again and again finds them a place in heaven. into whatever lineage he is born. A hero, possessor of true understanding, ennobles it back 7 generations. The 2 chief disciples. You greater than gods, I feel, can do far more. For the word perfect has now come true in you. When the Blessed One had stayed at Rajagaha, as long as he chose, he set out for Kapilavatthu. Wandering by stages, he eventually arrived there, and he stayed in Nigradas. Bach. Now when it was morning, the Blessed One dressed, and, taking his bowl and outer robe, he went to the residence of Suddhodana, the Sakyan, and there he sat down on a seat made ready. The account of this visit given in the canon is brief to the point of abruptness. So before proceeding with it, a few details from the commentary will make the situation clearer. Narrator 2. When the Buddha arrived at Kapilavatthu, the Sakyan clansmen, well known for their pride, were disinclined to pay homage to him. Thereupon he displayed the twin marvel causing the simultaneous appearance of jets of fire and water from all his limbs. This was followed by the preaching of the Vesantara birth story. After the first ceremonial meal had been given to him in his father's palace, he preached the Dhammapala birth story, and the king attained to the 3rd or penultimate stage of realization. He died an arahant some 4 years later. At the same time, the queen, Mahapajapati, mother of Prince Nanda and aunt of the Buddha, attained the 1st stage of realization. That same day had been chosen for the celebration to mark the forthcoming marriage of Prince Nanda, Queen Mahapajapati's only son. Now when the Buddha rose to go, he gave Prince Nanda his bowl to hold and departed. Not knowing what to do, Prince Nanda followed him with the bowl, and, as he left, his bride-to-be called to him, "Come back soon, Prince." When they arrived at the Buddha's dwelling, the Buddha asked him if he would leave the house life out of reverence rather than inclination. He agreed. On the 7th day, the Buddha again took his meal in his father's palace. Now the canonical account continues. Prince Rahula's mother then said to Prince Rahula, "That is your father, Rahula. Go and ask for your inheritance." So Prince Rahula went to the Blessed One and stood before him. "Your shadow is pleasant, monk." Then the Blessed One got up from his seat and went away. Prince Rahula followed behind the Blessed One, saying, "Give me my inheritance." "Monk, give me my inheritance, monk." Then the Blessed One told the Venerable Sariputta, "Then, Sariputta, give him the going forth." "How am I to give Prince Rahula the going forth, Lord?" The Blessed One then made this the reason and the occasion to give a talk on the Dhamma, and he addressed the bhikkhus thus: "I allow the going forth to be given by means of the 3 refuges. But it should be given in this way. First, the hair and beard must be shaved off and the yellow robe put on. Then he who is to go forth should arrange his robe on one shoulder, and after paying homage at the bhikkhus' feet he should kneel, and with his hands raised palms together he should say this: I go to the Buddha for refuge. I go to the Dhamma for refuge. I go to the Sangha for refuge. For the second time. For the third time. Then the Venerable Sariputta gave Prince Rahula the going forth. Now Subhadana the Sakyan went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down at one side. He said, I ask one favor of the Blessed One. Perfect ones have left favors behind, Gautama. It is permissible, Lord, and blameless. Tell it then, Gautama. Lord, I suffered no little pain when the Blessed One went forth. Then there was Nanda. Rahula is too much. Love for our children. Lord cuts into the outer skin. Having cut into the outer skin, it cuts into the inner skin. Having cut into the inner skin, it cuts into the flesh. Having cut into the flesh, it cuts into the sinews. Having cut into the sinews, it cuts into the bones. Having cut into the bones, it reaches the marrow and stays there. Lord, it would be good if the Venerable Ones did not give the going forth without the parents' consent. The Blessed One instructed, urged, roused, and encouraged Subhadana the Sakyan with talk on the Dhamma.
Then Suddhodana
The Sakyan got up from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, he left, keeping him on his right. The Blessed One then made this the reason and the occasion to the two chief disciples give a talk on the Dhamma, and he addressed the Bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, you should not give the going forth to children without their parents' consent. If anyone does this, he commits an offense of wrongdoing. Radishan claims that the decision of the Buddha's cousin Nanda and others to leave the house life was made at the time of this visit. The Buddha had already gone away from Kapilavatthu but was still in the northern parts of Kosala. Meanwhile, the two following incidents may have occurred about now, though there is no definite indication where to place them. First voice. Thus I heard. At one time the Blessed One was journeying through the Kosalan country with the Venerable Nagasamala as his attendant monk. On the way the Venerable Nagasamala saw a fork in the road. He said to the Blessed One, Lord, that is the way. Let us go that way. When this was said, the Blessed One replied, This is the way.
Nagasamala.
Let us go this way. A second and a third time the Venerable Nagasamala said the same thing and received the same answer. Then he put the Blessed One's bowl and outer robe down on the ground and departed. As he went along that road, robbers appeared, and they beat him with cuffs and kicks and broke his bowl and tore his cloak of patches. Afterwards, he came to the Blessed One with his bowl broken and his cloak of patches torn, and he told him what had happened. Knowing the meaning of this, the Blessed One then uttered this exclamation: A wise man and a foolish one walked and lived in company. Milk-drinking cranes leave marsh water. The wise leave what they know is bad. Now while the Blessed One was staying in the Kosalan country, at Arakikwa on the slopes of the Himalayas, this thought arose in his mind while he was alone in retreat: is it possible to govern without killing and ordering execution, without confiscating and sequestrating, without sorrowing and inflicting sorrow, in other words, righteously? Then Mara the Evil One became aware in his the two chief disciples' mind of the thought in the Blessed One's mind, and he went to him and said, "Let the Blessed One govern, let the Sublime One govern, without killing and ordering execution, without confiscating and sequestrating, without sorrowing and inflicting sorrow, in other words, righteously." Evil One, what end have you in view that you address me thus? Lord, the four bases for success have been constantly maintained in being by the Blessed One, constantly practiced, made the vehicle, made the basis, established, consolidated and properly undertaken. And so, Lord, if the Blessed One were willing to resolve, let Himalaya, King of mountains, be made of gold, it would become a gold
mountain.
And were that mountain all of yellow gold, twice that is not enough for one man's wants. To know this is to act accordingly. How should a man who has seen suffering, and whence its source, turn to sense desires? For when he knows this substance of rebirth is that which binds him to the world, a man cannot but train to rid himself of it. Then Mara the Evil One understood, the Blessed One knows me, the Sublime One knows me. Sad and disappointed, he vanished at once. Second voice. The occasion was this. The Blessed One was staying at Anyapia. There is a town of the Malayans called Anyapia, and by that time many well-known Sakyan princes had gone forth under the Blessed One. But there were two brothers, Mahanama the Sakyan and Anuruddha the Sakyan. Anuruddha had been delicately brought up. He had 3 palaces, one for the summer, one for the rains, and one for the winter. For 4 months he would be entertained in the rains palace by minstrels with no men among them, and never come down to the lower palace. It occurred to Mahanama, now many well-known Sakyan princes have gone forth under the Blessed One, but no one in our family has gone forth from the house life into homelessness. Suppose I went forth, or Anuruddha. Then he went to Anuruddha and told him what had occurred to him. Anuruddha said, "But I have been delicately brought up. E cannot go forth from the home life into homelessness. You go forth." "Come then, Anuruddha, I shall instruct you in the household life. Now first a field must be plowed, then it must be sown, then water must be led into it, then the water must be drained, then the field must be weeded, then the crop must be cut, then it must be gathered in, then it must be stacked, then it must be threshed, then the straw must be removed, then the chaff must be winnowed off. Then it must be sifted, then it must be stored away. Now when that is done, it must all be done again next year, and the year after. The work never finishes, there is no end to the work. Then when will there be an end to the work? When shall we have the leisure to gratify the 5 strands of the sensual desires we are provided and furnished with? My dear Anuruddha, the work never finishes, there is no end to the work. Our father and our grandfather both died while their work was still unfinished. So now it is for you to learn about this household life. I shall go forth from the home life into homelessness. Anuruddha went to his mother and told her, Mother, I want to go forth from the home life into homelessness. Please give me your
permission.
When this was said, she told him, You 2 sons of mine are dear and precious to me, not repugnant. In case of your death we should lose you against our will, but why should I give you my permission to go forth from the house life into homelessness while you are still
living?
He asked a second and a third time. Then his mother said, My dear Anuruddha, if Badiya the royal Sakyan who is governing the Sakyans goes forth, you may do so too. 5. Now Badiya the royal Sakyan who was governing the Sakyans at the time was a friend of Anuruddha's, and his mother had thought, This Badiya is a friend of Anuruddha's. He is not anxious to go forth from the home life, which is why she had spoken as she did. Then Anuruddha went to Badiya and said, My going forth depends on yours. If your going forth depends on mine, then let it no longer be so. You and I will, well, you go forth when you like. Come, let us both go forth together from the house life into homelessness. I cannot. I will do anything else for you that I can. You go forth. My mother has said, My dear Anuruddha, if Badiya the royal Sakyan who is governing the Sakyans goes forth, you may go forth. 2. And your words were these, If your going forth depends on mine, then let it no longer be so. You and I will, well, you go forth when you like. Come, let us both go forth from the home life into homelessness. At that time people used to speak the truth, used to keep their word. Badiya told Anuruddha, Wait 7 years. At the end of 7 years both of us shall go forth. It was in the course of that rainy season that the Venerable Badiya realized the 3 true knowledges. The Venerable Anuruddha aroused the divine eye. The Venerable 3/4 Nanda realized the fruition of stream entry. Devdatta produced the ordinary man's supernormal powers. At this time, whenever the Venerable Badiya went into the forest or to the root of a tree or to a room that was void, he was constantly exclaiming, O bliss! O bliss! A number of bhikkhus went to the Blessed One and told him about it, adding, There seems no doubt, Lord, that the Venerable Badiya is leading the holy life dissatisfied, or he is remembering his former position as ruler. Then the Blessed One sent for him and asked him if it was true. It is so, Lord. But Badiya, what good do you see in doing this? Formerly, Lord, when I had royal status, there was a well-posted guard, both inside and outside the palace, and also both inside and outside the city, and also both inside and outside the district. Even though I was so guarded and protected, I was fearful, anxious, suspicious, and worried. But now, Lord, when I am gone to the forest or to the root of a tree or to a room that is void, I am not fearful or anxious or suspicious or worried. I live at ease, in quiet, good that I see in doing this. Knowing the meaning of this, the Blessed One then uttered this
exclamation,
who has no longer conflict lurking in him, will have surmounted all the kinds of being. For he is fearless, blissful, free from sorrow. No deity can vie with him in glory.
20.
Now the venerable Nanda, the Blessed One's half-brother, put on pressed and ironed robes, and he anointed his eyes, and took a glazed bowl. Then he went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down at one side. When he had done so, the Blessed One told him, Nanda, it is not proper that you, a clansman who has gone forth out of faith from the house life into homelessness, should put on pressed and ironed robes, anoint your eyes, and take a glazed bowl. What is proper for you, a clansman who has gone forth out of faith from the house life into homelessness, is to be a forest dweller, an eater only of alms food got by begging, a wearer of refuse-rag robes, and to dwell without regard for sensual desires. Meanwhile the novice Rahula, now 11 years old, was living under the elder Sariputta's care at Ambalahika, near Rajagaha, where the Buddha returned in due course. Thus I heard. At one time the Blessed One was living at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary, and the venerable Rahula was living at Ambalahika. When it was evening, the Blessed One rose from retreat, and he went to the
Vénérable Rahula à Tambalaïka.
The venerable Rahula saw him coming, and he prepared a seat for him and water for washing his feet. The Blessed One sat down on the seat prepared and washed his feet. The venerable Rahula then paid homage to him and sat down at one side. The Blessed One poured a small quantity of water into the water dipper, and he addressed the venerable Rahula thus: Rahula, do you see this small quantity of water in the water dipper? Yes, Lord. Unless people are careful to avoid knowingly telling lies, there is as little good in them as this. Then the Blessed One threw the small amount of water away, and he asked, Rahula, did you see that small amount of water I threw away? Yes, Lord. Unless people are careful to avoid knowingly telling lies, the good there is in them is thrown away like this. Then the Blessed One turned the water dipper upside down and he asked, Rahula, do you see this water dipper turned upside down? Yes, Lord. Unless people are careful to avoid knowingly telling lies, the good there is in them is treated like this. Then the Blessed One turned the water dipper right way up again. And he asked, Rahula, Do you see this water dipper now quite empty? Yes, Lord. Unless people are careful to avoid knowingly telling lies, they are quite as empty of good as this. Now, Rahula, suppose there were a royal tusker elephant with tusks as long as chariot poles, full-grown in stature, highly bred and well used to battles, and in battle he used his forefeet and his hind feet and his forequarters and his hind quarters, and his head and his ears and his tusks and his tail, and yet he kept his trunk back. Then the man on his back would think, though he uses all his limbs, he keeps his trunk back, and so he has not yet devoted his life to the king. But as soon as he used all his limbs and his trunk as well, then the man on his back would think, he uses all his limbs and also his trunk, and so he has now devoted his life to the king. He needs no more training. So too, Rahula, unless people are careful to avoid knowingly telling lies, I do not say of them that they need no more training. So, Rahula, you must train yourself never to speak a falsehood even for a joke. What do you think a looking-glass is for?
Rahula.
To look at oneself in, Lord. In just the same way you should keep on looking at your acts of body, acts of speech and acts of mind. The Buddha then went on to give him detailed instructions how to review every action before, during and after its performance, judging it to be unwholesome if he found it to lead to his own harm or to that of others or to that of both, judging it to be wholesome if it did not, and shaping future action accordingly.